This is where we as a community need to come together. We need to have a voice. We need to speak. Something has to be done. This cannot happen again.
A plea from a mother whose 5-year-old son survived the Texas elementary school massacre. Tonight, grief, frustration, and anger as the town of Uvalde and really this entire nation begin to come to grips with the horror that left 19 children and 2 teachers dead. And tonight, as families mourn the losses of children as young as 8 years old, we are hearing renewed calls for change to prevent the next, perhaps inevitable tragedy. NBC's Bree Jackson has the latest.
Police investigating another mass shooting. Across the country, people mourning the elementary school children and teachers killed in Texas.
When in God's name will we do what needs to be done to, if not completely stop, fundamentally change the amount of the carnage that goes on in this country?
All too familiar condolences coming from Capitol Hill.
The innocent young lives that were stolen by this pointless, senseless brutality.
Despite the frequency of these tragedies, still no signs of action to stop mass shootings. Efforts to pass new gun legislation have repeatedly failed. 2 House-passed bills aimed at expanding background checks stalled in the Senate. Democrats blame Republicans.
Too many members on that side care more about the NRA than they do about families who grieve victims of gun violence.
Violence parents impacted by school shootings warn will happen again.
The next one is being planned right now.
Some school systems have beefed up security to better protect students and teachers. Texas authorities say armed officers failed to stop the suspect, armed with an AR-style rifle, from entering the school. New York's governor raises concerns about someone so young legally purchasing a deadly weapon.
I want to work with the legislature to change that. I want it to be 21.
While the families of the 10 people killed at a Buffalo supermarket put their loved ones to rest, in Texas, the community is just beginning to come together to grieve. In Washington, Bree Jackson for NBC News.
And the impact of that unspeakable violence in Uvalde extending across this country, including to right here in the Portland metro area. Understandably, there are so many emotions and questions, among them how to begin to have a conversation with your children about this tragedy. Mike Benner joins us now. Mike, you also talked to local high school students who have turned the horror of the last 24 hours into a call for change.
Yeah, David, I can tell you that students walked out of 2 Lake Oswego high schools to bring awareness to what they believe are lax gun laws. Of course, not all kids can wrap their heads around what happened because they're too young. Experts say talk to those young kids about what happened in Texas. Just do so carefully.
Turning grief into action. This was the scene outside Lake Oswego's Lake Ridge High Wednesday afternoon. Dozens of students walked out of class to rally for stricter gun laws.
Vote for common sense gun legislation. Vote for people who do advocate for that and continue to do so.
Firearms are the leading cause of death for children and teens.
While these kids may have a general understanding of Tuesday's mass shooting and the tools to process it, in all likelihood, younger kids do not.
This is going to impact kids. The stress, the worry.
Dr. Ben Hoffman is a professor of pediatrics at OHSU. He encourages parents to talk to their kids, school age and above, about the violence that unfolded in Uvalde, Texas, but do so gingerly.
I would be prepared to open up the conversation and then just sit back and listen and maybe not wait to talk, but really sit back and listen so that you can understand their perspectives, their questions, their concerns, their fears.
Undoubtedly, the emotions will be aplenty. Dr. Hoffman suggests responding in an open and honest fashion without scaring your child.
I definitely would reinforce the safety of the child within the family, the fact that, this happened a long way away, and in Portland, that we're safe here, your school is safe, people love you, and we're going to work really hard to make sure that this doesn't happen.
The violence we've witnessed.
That work is already underway. And for proof, just look at the walkout at Lake Ridge High School. Students not terribly older than the Texas students who lost their lives, calling for change.
I have to be hopeful for the future generations that this will be the last generation that has to deal with this.
All right, circling back to our chat with Dr. Ben Hoffman for a moment. He says if you're at all concerned about that talk with your kids or how they're reacting to the shooting in Texas, pick up the phone and contact your pediatrician. These pediatricians, these doctors, they're here to help us navigate all of this because, David, it is not easy.
No, it is not. Mike Benner reporting. Thank you, Mike. And as stories of tragedy and heroism continue to emerge out of Texas tonight, NBC Nightly News will have a special 1-hour edition with Lester Holt anchoring the newscast live from Uvalde. Now that begins at 5:30 and will preempt KGW's The Story at 6. I will be back at 6:30. Your latest local headlines, of course, always up on KGW.com.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do find our verdicts upon the counts submitted to us as follows. Count 1, murder in the second degree, guilty.
And with that gasp, romance novelist Nancy Crampton Brophy became a convicted murderer. The jury delivering that verdict after a trial that spanned nearly 7 weeks. Brophy found guilty of fatally shooting her husband Dan of 26 years nearly 4 years ago. Let's bring in Brian Clerkley. And Brian, this was quick. The jury reaching that unanimous guilty verdict really within 24 hours here.
Yeah, David, and I did speak to Daniel Brophy, the victim's mother and son, and they say that they're happy with this verdict. They say it's been a long 4 years, and finally there's justice. So now they can actually begin the grieving process.
Count 1, murder in the second degree, guilty.
After about 24 hours of deliberation, a jury found Nancy Crampton Brophy guilty of killing her husband, Daniel. The murder happened nearly 4 years ago in June of 2018. Daniel Brophy's mother, Karen, says she's been praying for justice.
I've had a struggle believing Nancy. She was our daughter-in-law for a long time. And when she was arrested, it was a great surprise to us, until we found out that she hasn't been truthful with us either. So
the state said Crampton Brophy lied about where she was the morning of the murder. Her van was caught on surveillance in the area of the Oregon Culinary Institute in southwest Portland around the time of the murder. Prosecutors say the motive was money, insurance money Nancy would receive upon her husband's death. During the trial, Nancy told jurors she did not kill her husband. Daniel's son and Crampton Brophy's stepson, Nathaniel, was there Wednesday morning as the verdict was read.
To finally have some closure has been very important and meaningful for our family, and feel that we can start to kind of move on and remember my father always, but begin that process of starting to grieve.
The verdict comes almost 4 years to the day of Daniel Brophy's death. Karen Brophy says she learned just how much her son was loved during this trial.
through the trial, Portland has learned that our son was a great guy, you know, and we really miss him, and it's been a heartwarming experience in that way.
Nancy Crampton Brophy's sentencing is scheduled for June 13th at 9 a.m. David?
And we will be there. Brian Clerkley, thank you for your reporting along the way on this case. Now to an update this evening on some breaking news we first brought you Tuesday afternoon. The arrest of a man police say held 2 people hostage on a MAX train with a knife and a barbecue skewer. Now officers used flashbangs, you hear them there, to distract the suspect before they boarded the train and arrested the man named Marcus Tate. Tate faces multiple felony charges. He made his first court appearance today and he pleaded not guilty. Tonight, we continue to learn more about the suspect's history, including that on the night before that incident, Tate had actually been held in a hospital after police say he had a mental health crisis. Let's bring in investigative reporter Evan Watson. Evan, you took a closer look at this whole process, including the decision to release Tate. How does it actually work?
Police say Tate was taken into custody Monday night after a physical altercation with officers during an apparent mental health crisis. That was less than 24 hours before he was later accused of taking 2 people hostage on the MAX. Officers on Monday had taken him to a hospital where he was held overnight but released yesterday morning. In Oregon, any involuntary hold process featuring mental health evaluation can be complicated.
In the state of Oregon, the criteria is that somebody does pose an imminent risk to themselves or to other people.
Dr. James Koved is co-medical director of the Psychiatric Emergency Services Division at the Unity Center for Behavioral Health. When assessing patients brought in for a mental health evaluation, Koved may recommend treatment or care, but if they refuse, he must check off a detailed assessment before issuing a notification of mental illness or involuntary hold for treatment.
And the bar is quite high, and so we are looking for, we are sort of held to a standard of looking for very high level of risk that a person might be at in order to seek involuntary treatment.
In Marcus Tate's case, we know police officers brought him to a hospital the night before the Max train hostage situation after an apparent mental health crisis. He was held overnight. We don't know the details of any evaluation he received, but he was released the next morning.
People's circumstances change really quickly, and there's certain things that people might have done in the past that they wouldn't necessarily do in the future. It's a really challenging assessment.
In Oregon, if a physician does believe a patient meets all criteria for an involuntary hold, that assessment is reviewed by the county's involuntary commitment process before being reviewed by a judge before civil commitment may be approved.
There are times when we absolutely recognize that there's illness that's present, and we still are not able to provide treatment for people.
Koved said the current system has gaps and could leave vulnerability for risk, but it shows the balance between prioritizing civil liberties and prioritizing medical treatment.
Oregon, as a state, has chosen a relatively high bar, which allows people to live independently and to maintain their rights, and at the same time can be a real challenge when people are facing a high level of mental illness.
A diagnosis of purely substance abuse would not meet Oregon's criteria for an involuntary hold. Tate's next court hearing is Friday, June 3rd. David?
A challenging balancing act, as he put it there. Evan, thank you.